Welcome to Innovation Essentials Module 5, where we're going to be looking at bolder idea generation. Just a quick recap on what we covered in Module 4, where we were looking at questions and the role of questions in provoking better ideas. And it being one of the key, I believe, one of the key strategic tools that any organization can use to deliberately provoke better ideas across their organization. We introduced some tools to help you do that, to design questions, both in terms of their ability to deliver ideas or provoke ideas that are highly relevant to customers' most important needs, both now and in the future, and also their ability to provoke ideas that are incremental on the one hand, but also, if we need them to be, more disruptive and more transformational. And the way that we ended the module really was to be asking this question: are you asking better questions than the competition? Your ability to ask great questions will have an impact on the quality of your ideas, and therefore I believe this is something that is an easy competitive advantage to switch on should you choose to. So if you didn't yet see that module, I strongly suggest that you go back and watch that before you watch this, because the two are very closely related. So today, as I've said a couple of times now, we're going to be looking at bolder idea generation, so let's just jump in. So just a reminder, this is the journey that we're following over most of these modules. Today we are arriving at generating ideas, having produced some questions that are going to help us develop the type and the quality of ideas that we need. There are some resources in the book to follow along with if you want. If you don't have the book, as I've said a few times before in the other modules, you can get a lot of value from this module. It's entirely designed for you to be able to take some tools away without needing to buy the book. But if you do want to go deeper, these are the chapters where you'll find more help if you're looking for it. So let's get started. When I'm talking to the majority of the organizations that I work with for the first time, they usually it's a leader inside the organization, they'll say that they're in search of more innovation. But when I dig deeper, I usually find that there's plenty of incremental innovation going on. And what's missing is more disruptive innovation. That's the cry that I hear more than any other. And when that disruptive innovation cupboard is opened, usually there's very little in there. And the challenge is, how do we create more of these big ideas on an ongoing basis? Because we believe, which is true, they can deliver bigger returns, greater competitive advantage, deeper competitive advantage, and we need more of that in a world that is changing very quickly. So let's just zoom out a little bit. One of the ideas that I've been really struck by in the last couple of years is the idea that culture is defined as what is ordinary, meaning the way that we do things around here. Now, if that's true, I believe that the majority of organizations out there have a problem to confront and a reality to face. And that is that ordinary ways of working rarely produce extraordinary outcomes. So the way that we work day to day will generally only produce incremental ideas. We can't really expect breakthrough ideas to come out of normal working practices. It just doesn't work like that. And as I've said before, this sumo status quo guy is doing a good job at delivering today, but he is not that interested in seeing disruptive ideas come through the process, come through the organization that are going to potentially disrupt and slow down or trip up a business that is doing well. So where do we go? Well, there are a few principles that I want to give you today, some tools that I want to give you that can help you navigate this difficult issue. There are lots of different ways that we can look at it, but let me just give you some starters for 10 that you can start to put into practice today. So the areas that I'm going to look at are: 1, questions, which we've covered in some detail. I'm going to give a brief recap on questions. The second is state. Human beings do their best, most creative work when certain physical and mental and emotional dynamics are in place, many of which I believe are suppressed by working practices in many workplaces. So I'm going to give you some tools to help people show up in a better state to do creative work. That's my hope in this particular section. Then we're going to look at context. And bold ideas tend to emerge more readily when we're deliberate about the kind of context that we create. And we're going to look at what that is and how you can influence it. Next is time. I think often we're in too much of a rush for bold ideas to be able to come forward and emerge. And so I'm going to show you how you can rethink your use of time to actually amplify creativity. It's a subtle shift, but it can have a big impact. So that's time. Then we're going to look at diversity. And I'm sure many people watching this will know that a more diverse group of people will come up with more creative ideas on balance. But it turns out there are some kinds of diversity that matter more than others. And I'm going to show you which kinds of diversity you might want to think about prioritizing. And then the final area we're going to look at is that of sponsorship. So bold ideas typically die either a sudden death, or an instant no by a leader, or they suffer a long and tortuous death as the organization struggles to figure out, well, where does this idea fit? Where's it going to live? What are we going to do with it? Who even owns this thing? There's no clear place for it to go. So if bold ideas are going to live long enough inside our organizations to find out whether they really merit further investment and development, they need a certain type of sponsorship and protection. And we're going to be looking at that in the final section. So let's get started with questions. As we saw in Module 4, there's a close cause and effect relationship between questions and ideas. If we need more disruptive ideas, we need to be more deliberate in how we design and ask bolder, more ambitious questions. And we also need to prepare an environment where the ideas that come out of that are actually going to have a fairly good chance of survival. So we looked at, in the previous module, aligning questions with a specific outcome rather than asking general questions. How can we sell more of, blah, blah, blah. Be much more specific, be laser focused on what the outcome is for a particular customer in a particular context if it's a customer question. And then also thinking about the potential level of transformation that we want the question to provoke. So I'm not going to say any more than that because we've already done quite a lot of work in the previous module, but definitely go back and have a look at that if you're interested in figuring out how to design and implement more disruptive questions inside your organization. So let's move on now to state.